When people say family is everything, they rarely mention the fine print. The part that says everything includes the unspoken debts, the uneven expectations, and the embarrassments that stick to your ribs long after everyone else has moved on. I grew up learning that love meant making yourself useful, showing up with receipts, not ribbons. And for 28 years, that worked just fine for me. Until my brother got a luxury car and I got the bill. My name is Maya Khan. I live in Karachi in a second-floor apartment that smells faintly of cardamom and printer toner because I bake when I'm angry and work when I'm not. My parents, Fareed and Layla, still live in the old house with the lacquered furniture my mother polishes every Saturday like it's a shrine to a fortune that never quite arrived. My younger brother, Zain, is their golden son, the sort of boy who never needed to try very hard because someone else would tell him he was brilliant, even if he wasn't doing much besides smiling and showing up late. I'm not saying he's a monster. I'm just saying we were raised in the same house and taught very different hymns. Beta, help your brother find his keys. My mother would call when we were kids and he'd lose them for the third time that week. If I lost mine, I got a lecture about responsibility that could have been broadcast on state television. Girls must be careful, she'd say, like every misstep was a prophecy. My father was quieter in his favoritism, the way a gardener prunes one tree and lets the other fend for sunlight. He'd say things like, Zain has a knack for people. Maya, you have a brain for systems. I know he meant it kindly, but people get invited to parties. Systems get asked to fix the broken sink during dinner. By the time I went to university, I was already fluent in the language of being indispensable. I got a degree in accounting because numbers don't argue back. They don't demand you read their mind. And after graduation, when my father's import business had one bad quarter and then another, it was my spreadsheets that kept the bankers polite and the lights on at home. Just for a while, my father said the first time he took a loan in my name. His voice was rough that evening, rougher than I'd ever heard it. We'll clear it as soon as the shipment arrives. I nodded because that's what I do. I shoulder. I read the fine print and sign in the right place. And then I bake something sweet because otherwise I'll taste nothing but iron. A while became a habit. A habit turned into a pattern, and patterns may as well be tattoos. Zain, meanwhile, tried on futures-like shirts. First real estate, I have an eye for property, he told me, and then forgot to follow through on half his client calls. Then a startup with 2 college friends that never started up. Then a podcast, 4 episodes, and a long rant about hustle culture. He had a talent for appearing as though momentum was his second skin. The Instagram stories with fancy coffee cups, the captions about big meetings, the filtered selfies in other people's cars. My parents read the pictures like scripture. I read the bank notifications that arrived on my phone at 2 a.m. Your brother will find his path, my mother would tell me. Placing a warm roti on my plate as if carbs were an argument. You worry too much. I worry because someone has to. I never said it out loud. I gave her a smile and another set of spreadsheets. It's time showing how we could negotiate for a lower interest rate on the house repairs. She kissed my forehead. No one kissed my receipts. In our family, love often looked like shared meals and a set of assumptions. One of them was that I would handle the practical things, bills, taxes, renewing the CNIC cards, making sure the water tanker didn't stiff us. I am good at it, and sometimes I even feel an unholy pride. But there's an exhaustion that settles into your bones when your competence is the only part of you anyone notices. Zain noticed too, but only in the way people notice air. They need it, but they don't thank it. On the day this story really starts, I was leaving my office later than usual. It had been a difficult month with overlapping audits. My brain felt like a set of tangled headphone wires. It was raining, the kind of Karachi rain that turns the streets into impatient rivers. And I was 20 minutes away from my parents' house where we were supposed to have dinner. My mother had texted, "Come soon, Beta. Zain has big news." I put the words back in my pocket like a pebble. Big news from Zain could mean anything from I met a YouTuber to I bought a gym membership. I muttered to myself, please God, let it not require a loan. I arrived soaked at the gate, and before I could knock, the driveway lights burst on. There he was, Zane, beaming, like he was the patient zero of joy. Standing beside a car so glossy it reflected the clouds, a midnight blue. German machine with a price tag that could feed a small village. He looked like a child in a candy store. He looked like a victory parade. He looked like a billowy Instagram caption. "What do you think?" He shouted over the rain, arms wide. I stared, rainwater dripping from my nose. "I think I should have brought sunglasses." He laughed like I was his favorite person. For a minute, He jingled the keys in his hand and said, "It's mine. Finally. I told you, big news." My parents came out with umbrellas and pride. My mother clapped, cheeks flushed. My father smiled in that rare way, when his mouth softened and his eyes remembered how to twinkle. The car's headlights blinked, and my stomach did the opposite. "It's beautiful," I said carefully. "My job is to ask questions no one wants to answer." "How did you—" come inside," my mother said, shaking the umbrella over the threshold. "Dinner is getting cold." In the living room, the air smelled like biryani in triumph. Zane talked in bright, fast sentences. "I got a fantastic financing plan," he said. "You have to act when opportunity knocks, right?" He flashed his phone screen with an email open. Something about approval and congratulations and 6-digit numbers my brain filed under danger. My father clapped him on the back. "This is the kind of ambition I like to see," he said. "The car is an investment in your image. Clients notice." "Which clients?" I almost asked. I bit my tongue and served myself salad. Zane leaned toward me conspiratorially. "And the dealership manager knows me now. He said we can work something out with the paperwork so the installments don't crush me in the first year." My fork paused midair. "What paperwork?" "You know, standard stuff. I'll bring it by your place tomorrow. You can take a look, big sis." He winked. "You're the expert." A slow heat crawled up my neck. I heard the scrape of a pen across an old memory. The first time Dad had said, "just for a while." My mother caught my eye and smiled, her "don't make a fuss" smile. "Zane has worked so hard," she said. "Let him enjoy. We will all help." Help, such a small, light word. It floats like a bubble. It pops like 1-2. I set my fork down as gently as I could. "Congratulations," I told my brother. He hugged me, his cologne rich with notes of cedar and someone else's money. That night, I lay in bed in my apartment, the fan ticking slow circles overhead, and tried to talk myself into calm. Maybe he really has a plan. Maybe my phone buzzed. A text from Zane, "Sending you the documents now. You're the best, Maya. Don't know what I'd do without you." Then the attachments came in, one after another. Lease contract, guarantor form, income verification letter template. And there it was, like a small bomb that had already been detonated. Co-borrower, guarantor, Maya Khan. My throat dried up. The room felt smaller. I called him. He picked up on the second ring, still buoyant. "Sis, did you see? It's straightforward. You know how it is, they just need a stable income proof attached for the final approval. It's a formality." "A formality," I repeated flatly. "A formality that makes me legally responsible for your installments if you can't pay." "Come on," he said, the grin visible in his voice. "You know, I won't default. It's all good." The manager explained it. He said lots of families do this. "Does the manager also plan to cook the biryani when the bank calls?" The sarcasm slipped out before I could pull it back. Silence flickered on the line. "Maya, don't be dramatic," he said lightly. "You've got steady cash flow. It's just to help me get started. The first year is tight. After that, God willing, things will take off. I've got meetings lined up." "With who?" "People." "Which people?" "The ones I told you about. The ones with names Zane. Or the ones with selfies." Another silence. Then, softer. "Why are you like this?" I pressed my fingers to my temple. "Because I've seen what happens when the numbers aren't real." "Always the accountant," he muttered. "Can you at least check the documents?" I promised the dealership I'd return them tomorrow. "It's almost done. Dad and Mom are on board." Of course they were. "We will all help." The bubble sound again. "Pop." "I'll look," I said. I'm not promising anything. Thanks, Maya. You're the best. He hung up before I could say I wasn't. I didn't sleep. I printed everything and sat at my small kitchen table like a prosecutor building a case against a defendant I loved. The lease terms were shiny on the surface and rust underneath. It's a promotional interest rate that ballooned after 12 months. A penalty clause that made my stomach curdle, and a Kobara line that anchored me like a stone. The dealership's soap-slick language slid across the page. Congratulations, prestige, access. I wrote notes in the margins. Trap, trap, trap. At 3:15 a.m., I made tea, even though my doctor says tea after midnight is an act of sabotage. I thought of Zane's laugh in the rain, my father's hand heavy on his shoulder, my mother's eyes wet with pride. I thought of my own reflection earlier that day. Hair plastered to my cheeks, rainwater on my tongue. The car's headlights setting off something like alarm bells in my chest. I wanted to be the sister who could just be happy. I wanted to be the daughter who didn't make love look like a ledger. When the sun came up, weak and watery, I went for a walk along the edge of the neighborhood park, where the joggers all wear headphones and no one looks at anyone for too long. I tried to rehearse the conversation in my head. Zane, I love you, but I can't. Zane, I can't tie my financial future to your maybe. Zane, I am not a safety net dressed as a sister. By the time I reached my parents' house, my mother was watering her plants and humming. You look tired, she said, concerned but not surprised. I made parathas. I can't stay long, I said. Where is Zane? In the veranda, polishing his new toy, my father said, emerging behind her with his newspaper folded under his arm. He looked proud, younger. Come, the neighbors will pass by soon. It's good for the boy to be seen. I found Zane crouched by the front bumper, buffing away a smudge that probably existed only in his mind. He looked up, bright as a coin. Maya, did you bring the papers? I brought them, I said. And I brought myself. Both of us have things to say. He grinned, oblivious. The manager called. We just need your signature and a salary certificate. Easy, not easy, I said. And my voice must have sounded different because he finally merely looked. Zane, the terms are ugly. After 12 months, the interest climbs. If you're even a few days late, the penalties I won't be late, he said quickly. You always are, I said, and immediately hated how small and sharp I sounded. My father appeared in the doorway. What's this? He asked, still in that good mood that made him more careless than usual. Don't spoil the morning. I'm not trying to spoil anything, I said. I'm trying to keep us from drowning just because the water looks beautiful. Zane stood up, cloth in hand like a flag. You think I can't do this? He said, more wounded than angry. You think I'm a joke? I think you're my brother, I said. I think I know your strengths and your blind spots. And I think the bank knows neither and doesn't care. My mother joined us, anxiety pinching her mouth. Maya, please. We've had such a nice night. Your brother bought a car he can't afford. I finished for her, with terms that could drag all of us under. My father's tone flattened. Enough. Your brother is building something. The car is part of that. If we don't take risks, we never grow. How many risks with my name on them? The question snapped out before I could soften it. A flush climbed my father's neck. My mother's eyes darted between us as if she could stitch us back together with a look. Zane set his jaw. You signed for Dad when he needed you, he said. I remember. You didn't question him like this? I did, I said quietly. You just didn't hear it because you were busy being the exception to every rule. His eyes flashed. So that's what this is about. You're bitter. I laughed once, a sound without humor. I'm awake. We stood like that for people who knew exactly where to hurt each other and exactly how not to stop. The neighbors did pass by, as predicted, peeking in with polite curiosity. Zane smiled at them and lifted his chin, a billboard for success. I felt like a billboard for caution and wondered when those ever sold as well. I'm not signing, I said finally, softly. I can't. Something like surprise crossed my father's face, then hardening. Maya, I can't, I repeated. I looked at Zane. If you want this, you have to want it enough without me carrying the risk. Get a cheaper car. Delay a year. Build something real first. Wow, he said, letting out a puff of disbelief. Wow. After everything I've done for you. I stared. What have you done for me? I'm your brother, he said, as if that were a list. I almost laughed again, but I didn't want to be cruel. And I'm your sister, I said, not your guarantor. He looked at my mother, at my father, for backup. My mother's eyes pleaded with me silently. Please don't do this. My father's mouth was a stern line. But neither of them said the thing Zane wanted to hear, that I would fall into place as usual. Fine, he said finally, shrugging like it didn't matter. I'll figure it out myself. Don't worry. I'm very good at worry, I said, and walked inside to wash my hands even though I hadn't touched anything at all. The day went on. I tried to settle my heartbeat by rearranging my mother's spice cabinet and correcting a line item in her household budget that had been ignored for years. Zane left for meetings. My father left for the office. My mother made tea and watched me with a mixture of love and annoyance. The look you give a child who won't stop asking why. That evening, as the light turned honeyed and my resolve turned brittle from being held so long, Zane came home with a grin that made me brace myself. Good news, he announced, leaning in the doorway, shadow slicing across the tiles. Sorted. The dealership worked out a different plan. No need for you to sign. See? Easy. Relief and suspicion wrestled in my chest. How? He waved a hand. Don't stress. The manager had options. We're all good. All good is a universe. I wanted a map. Bring me the documents, I said. He rolled his eyes skyward. But he brought them. I read faster than I've ever read anything. The interest was higher from the start, the tenure shorter, the penalties just as sharp, and the co-borrower line, missing in its place a different name. I looked up slowly. Who is Lala Farid? Zane's smile thinned. Mom offered. She said you were getting too worked up. Don't worry, it's a formality. The room tilted. My mother stood behind him, hands folded, chin lifted, as if she were the one protecting me. I didn't want to upset you, she said, making her voice sweet and reasonable. This way, everyone is happy. I'm your mother, of course. I can help my son. You do so much already, Maya. Rest this time. The tea in my stomach curdled. Mom, your pension, your savings. If anything goes wrong, nothing will go wrong, she said. With that reckless faith our family reserves for the men we love. You think too much? I looked at Zane. You let her sign. He shrugged, a small, immature gesture that made me want to shake him. She offered. She insisted. Anyway, like I told you, everything is under control. It's control. That night, I went home and sat on my floor and made 2 lists. On the left, things I can control. On the right, things I can't. I wrote my decisions on the left and my family on the right. And I hated that truth so much, I wanted to cross the whole page out. The next morning, a message from my father pinged my phone. Family lunch Sunday. Everyone dressed nicely. Zane will bring the car. We will take pictures. I stared at the screen. I thought of my mother's signature, looped and confident, where mine should have been. I thought of the way Zane had said formality like that word could hold an ocean. I replied, I'll be there. When Sunday came, the house looked festive. My mother had strung marigold garlands by the gate. And someone had hired a photographer from the neighborhood who had learned his entire craft from wedding shoots. Zane had washed the car again. It glittered in the sun like a promise no one had read thoroughly. Neighbors and cousins floated in, drawn by the gravitational pull of something shiny. Stand there, the photographer said, positioning us like he was arranging fruits in a bowl. Father with the son on the driver's side, mother on the passenger. Sister Hum, hold the keys for one shot, just for fun. I did not take the keys. I folded my hands and smiled like a saint on a stained glass window. Inside, my thoughts were firecrackers. Formality, investment in image. We'll help. Don't worry. While the photographer snapped, Zane basked. I told you, he murmured to me between shots. Everything falls into place when you decide to move. Everything falls, I said, almost too softly to hear. He didn't catch it. Or he did and chose not to. We ate lunch under the awning, mutton pulao and chicken karahi, and a dessert so sweet it made my teeth ache. Everyone congratulated Zayn like he had won a marathon instead of purchased a very expensive treadmill. My father held forth about entrepreneurship. My mother's face shone. The photographer took more pictures of the car than of the family. And maybe that was a metaphor, or maybe it was just Karachi on a Sunday. I washed dishes while my mother directed the leftovers into plastic containers. "Don't be upset," she said, voice gentle as if I were scolding a pet. "Your brother needs this chance. You'll see. He'll surprise you." "He's already surprised me," I said, drying a bowl. She looked at me with weary sweetness. "You are strong. Not everyone is like you." I wanted to say that strength has nothing to do with it. That I am just someone who's learned to hold things until my knuckles go white. But there are only so many metaphors you can speak before they sound like self-pity. So I said, "Okay, Mama," and handed her the bowl. When I left that afternoon, the sky was the exact color of Zayn's car. A perfect match. I stood at the gate a moment, letting the heat lace itself into my hair, and I thought, I will not let this drown me. If the car is a wave, I'll learn to surf. Or better, I smiled without humor, I'll learn to swim somewhere he can't see me. I didn't know it then, standing there with marigold petals crunching under my sandals, that the bill had already begun to arrive in ways that had nothing to do with money, in small shifts of respect. In the way people's eyes slid past me to the gleaming machine. In the stories that would soon be told about responsibility and risk and who owes what to whom. I didn't know that a humiliation was coming with the persistence of monsoon rain, or that it would wash everything bare. I only knew that my mother had signed a line that should have been mine, and my brother had driven away in a car that was also a mirror. And in that mirror, I didn't like the shape of the person I saw. But I promised myself something as I waited for a rickshaw and watched Zayn reverse the car with exaggerated care, as if he were cradling a newborn. I promised I would not be the family accountant who only knows how to say no. I would figure out a different kind of math, one that calculated dignity, opportunity, and payback in the same ledger. I would find a way to be more than useful. I would find a way to be seen. When the rickshaw pulled up, the driver glanced at the car, then at me. "Mashallah," he said, nodding toward the house. I said, climbing in. "We'll see." I should have trusted the tightening in my chest the day of the family lunch. But it wasn't until 2 weeks later, at a dinner that was supposed to be just close family and a few friends, that the real humiliation unfolded, the kind that stains your memory like turmeric. Impossible to wash out no matter how hard you scrub. My mother had been planning it all week. A celebratory dinner in honor of Zayn's new beginnings. The guest list included our maternal cousins, 2 of my father's oldest friends from his business days, and a few neighbors who had always loved to hover around our family whenever there was something shiny to admire. And this time, the shiny thing wasn't the new chandelier or the foodie, was the luxury car parked proudly at the gate. As if it were the actual guest of honor. I arrived early, out of habit. My mother was already in hostess mode, directing the cooks, adjusting the tablecloths, humming with the thrill of being admired. She kissed me on the cheek. "Maya, beta, wear something bright," she urged, scanning my simple navy shalwar kameez. "It's a celebration. Don't look so serious." "It's fine, Mama," I murmured. I came to help, not to model for the neighbors. She frowned but didn't press. She was too busy checking whether the dessert bowls matched the serving spoons. Meanwhile, Zayn strolled in half an hour later, wearing a crisp white kurta that probably cost more than 3 months of my grocery budget, grinning like he was the bridegroom of the evening. The car keys dangled from his fingers like jewelry. He had been rehearsing this entrance, I realized. He wanted the timing, the aura, the look-at-me effect. "Big sis," he called out, giving me a half hug before my father clapped him on the back. "Glad you came on time. Tonight's going to be epic." "Epic," I echoed dryly, though no one was listening. My parents orbited around him like he was a planet that made the rest of us possible. As the guests began to arrive, the car quickly became the centerpiece of conversation. The men admired its engine specs and leather seats. The women admired the color and asked about the monthly installments in hushed tones. Cousins posed for selfies, leaning against the hood while Zane handed over the keys for just one spin around the block, as if generosity were another one of his hobbies. I watched, sipping a glass of water, invisible but useful the way I always was. People asked me to fetch napkins, refill glasses, and carry extra plates from the kitchen. Nobody asked me about my work, my life, or my opinions on German engineering. And then came the moment, the spark that would burn into humiliation. Dinner had been served, laughter spilling over plates of kebabs and steaming biryani, when my father stood up to give a small speech. He loved these moments, commanding the room, making people nod along with his words. "I want to take a minute," he began, raising his glass of water, "to recognize my son Zane, mashallah. He is bold, ambitious, and not afraid to take risks. This car, this step represents his courage to dream big. That's what success requires. Courage." The guests clapped. Zane ducked his head, pretending modesty while glowing with pride. And of course, my father added, "Every young man needs the support of his family. Without strong roots, the tree cannot grow." He looked at my mother, who beamed. Then his eyes flicked to me. "And some sacrifices are invisible, but they matter. Maya, you've been a steady hand in the family. You keep things running." But tonight, his voice grew louder. "Tonight is about Zane's achievement. It's his turn to shine." The words landed like a slap. Invisible. "But tonight doesn't belong to you." I forced a smile, nodding like I agreed. Around me, cousins whispered, neighbors murmured approval. And all eyes shifted to Zane. No one noticed the way my fork trembled against my plate. Then, as if humiliation needed a sequel, one of my father's friends leaned toward him and asked with a chuckle, "So, Farid Bhai, how much did this beauty cost you all?" "Must have been quite the investment." Zane laughed easily. "Oh, it's nothing. We worked it out. Easy monthly installments. You know how it is these days." Then, with a smirk and a careless gesture toward me, he added, "Besides, I've got the best accountant in the family, keeping things smooth. Maya's basically my personal CFO." The table erupted in polite laughter. My cousins nudged each other. My mother chuckled as if it were a charming compliment. But I froze, because I knew the truth. While the papers now bore my mother's name, the bills and reminders were still routed through emails, phone calls, fine print. I was the one keeping track, the one carrying the weight no one wanted to see. And here he was, presenting it like a punchline. "Maya?" One of the cousins teased, raising his glass. "So you're the one really paying for the car, huh?" I wanted to crawl under the table. Or scream. Or both. Instead, I smiled tightly and said, "Apparently that's the family joke now." They laughed again, not catching the bitterness under my words. Zane winked, leaning back like he'd just won another round. Later, when dessert was being served, my aunt cornered me in the hallway. She whispered, "Maya, you're such a dutiful daughter. Always helping. But tell me honestly, did you really sign the papers for Zane's car? Is your salary covering him?" The question sliced me open. People were already gossiping. My humiliation wasn't private anymore. It was currency. I shook my head quickly. "No, Mama signed." But even as I said it, I knew how it sounded. Like a daughter who let her aging mother take on the burden while she stood aside. My aunt's eyebrows lifted. She gave a small knowing smile and patted my arm before walking away. That smile said it all. Poor Maya. Always the useful one. Never the star. When I returned to the table, the laughter was still rolling, my brothers still glowing, and my parents still blind. My humiliation had already been woven into the evening like thread in a tapestry, and no one else even noticed. I sat there, spooning Kia I couldn't taste, hearing my heartbeat louder than the conversation. My mind looped over and over. I'm the joke. I'm the safety net. I'm the invisible one. Every mashallah directed at Zane was a nail hammered into me. Every photo snapped beside the car was proof of who mattered and who didn't. And the worst part? I had let it happen. I had been the one keeping things quiet, smoothing the wrinkles, bearing the weight so no one else had to. And for what? To be laughed at, pitied, and dismissed in my own family's house? That night, when the guests finally left and the house quieted, I excused myself early. I walked to my apartment with my fists clenched and my teeth grinding. The echo of their laughter followed me all the way home. I promised myself something then. This won't stand. They think I'm invisible, but they've mistaken my silence for weakness. They've mistaken my caution for inability. They've mistaken my loyalty for servitude. They were wrong. And sooner than they could imagine, they would know it. Humiliation has a way of fermenting inside you. At first, it tastes sour, sharp, and unbearable. But if you leave it long enough, it turns into something else. Something strong. Something that demands to be poured out. After that dinner, I couldn't sleep. The laughter. The joke about me being my brother's personal CFO. The whispers about who really paid for the credit all played on repeat in my head. I kept thinking, if this is what happens when I stay silent, maybe it's time to stop being silent. And then the revelation came. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was at the office, buried in ledgers and invoices, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I ignore those, but something instinct maybe made me answer. Hello? This is Ms. Maya Khan. The voice was professional, clipped. Yes, this is Faisal from Crescent Bank. I'm calling regarding the installment payment for the XICLE leased under Mrs. Layla Farid's name, co-signed by you as the emergency contact. The first installment has been delayed. We need confirmation by tomorrow, otherwise late fees will apply. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Excuse me, what do you mean delayed? The car was delivered less than a month ago. Yes, ma'am, he said smoothly, but the first installment was due within 15 days of delivery. It was not received. I gripped the phone tighter, and my mother signed for this, not me. Yes, but your number was provided as financial contact. Are you able to make the payment on her behalf? My heart sank. I almost laughed at the irony. Invisible, yes, but still the one whose number the bank called first. I told him I'd check with my family and revert, then hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. So Zane had already missed his very first payment. That evening, I went straight to my parents' house. I found Zane lounging in the living room, scrolling his phone as if nothing was wrong. My mother was in the kitchen, humming, while rolling dough, completely unaware of the storm building. Zane, I said sharply, "Where's the car file?" He looked up, startled. What? The dealership documents, the payment schedule? Where are they? Why? He asked, already defensive. I've got it under control. Really? I shot back. Because Crescent Bank just called me about a missed installment. His face paled. They called you. Yes, me, not mom, not dad, me. Which tells me you gave them my number. Again, he stammered. Relax, Maya. It's just a mix-up. I had a big expense this week. One of my friends needed me too. I cut him off. Don't lie. You already missed the first payment. The first? How do you think you're going to handle the rest? My mother came out, flour on her hands, frowning. What's going on? I turned to her. Did you know the bank is already calling about the car loan? Her eyes widened. What? No, Zane? He shrugged, trying to look casual. It's just a delay. I'll fix it. But I had already stormed into his room and found the file stuffed carelessly under his desk. I flipped through it and my stomach dropped. Not only had he missed the first payment, but the interest clause was worse than I'd remembered. Hidden fees. Balloon payments. And then tucked into the back pocket of the file I found something even more shocking. Another contract. A second loan application. This one with my father's forged signature on it. I froze. My father's handwriting wasn't easy to mimic, but Zane had done it poorly. Anyone with half a brain could tell it wasn't authentic. But the bank clerks probably hadn't bothered to check. My father's name was on another line of debt he knew nothing about. I marched back into the living room, waving the papers like evidence in a courtroom. Explain this. My father, who had just returned from the office, frowned at the papers. What's this? Zane's face went gray. Maya, don't. This, I said, my voice shaking with fury, is another loan. With your name on it, Abba. Except it's not your signature. Zane forged it. The room went silent. My mother gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. My father snatched the paper, his eyes narrowing as he studied the crooked scrawl pretending to be his. Zane, he said slowly, dangerously. Did you sign my name? Zane's mouth opened and closed like a fish. It was just paperwork. They wouldn't approve me otherwise. I was going to handle it. You didn't need to know. You forged my name, my father said, his voice low, trembling with contained rage. You made me liable without my knowledge. My mother whispered, Ya Allah, and sank onto the sofa. I felt my own chest tighten. This wasn't just about a car anymore. This was fraud. This was a crime. You humiliated me in front of the entire family, I said, tears stinging my eyes. You made me the joke, the CFO, the safety net. And all this time, you were already sinking. You forged Aba's name. Do you realize what could happen if this comes out? His reputation, his business, everything could collapse. Zane stood up, his voice rising. I did it for us. For the family. For the image. You don't understand how business works. People judge you by what you drive, by how you look. This car is an investment. An investment. I shouted. In debt. In lies. In humiliation. My father slammed his fist on the table. Enough, Zane. You've disgraced me. You've disgraced this family. For the first time in my life, I saw fear flicker across my brother's face. Real fear. Not the smug grin, not the practiced charm, just raw panic. And then came the true revelation, one I hadn't expected. My father turned to me, his voice heavy. Maya, this isn't the first time. The room went still. What do you mean? Asked. He looked down, ashamed. Years ago, when I had those bad quarters in business, Zane, he borrowed money in my name. Without telling me. From some questionable people. I only found out when they came knocking. I stared at him, stunned. And you kept this secret. I paid it off, he said quietly. I thought he would learn. I thought he would grow. I didn't want your mother to know. I didn't want you to lose respect for him. Lose respect. My respect had been bleeding out in drops for years, but now it gushed like a wound. So this is a pattern, I whispered. Not an accident. Not ambition. A pattern of lies. My father closed his eyes. My mother began to cry softly. And Zane just stood there, caught in the wreckage of his own choices, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. In that moment, I knew something had shifted. The humiliation at dinner had stung. Yes, but this revelation cut deeper. My brother wasn't just careless. He was dangerous. He was willing to drag all of us down for the sake of appearances. And my parents. They had enabled it. They had looked away, prayed it would fix itself, told themselves that Zane was just finding his path. Well, I had seen enough. I didn't say much more that night. I let the storm rage between my father and my brother, let the tears fall from my mother's eyes. But inside, a steel rod had formed in my spine. They had mistaken my silence for weakness. They had mistaken my loyalty for blind obedience. They had mistaken me for a safety net. But now I had the truth. And truth, I realized, was a weapon. And I was going to use it. Silence is a strange weapon. When you keep it too long, people assume it means you're harmless. But when you finally break it, the sound is deafening. After years of swallowing my words, I was ready to let mine out, and this time, they would cut. The night I discovered Zane's forgery, I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at my small desk with the car documents spread out like evidence in a trial. My phone buzzed with emails, reminders, and late notices all pointing to the same truth. Zane had built a castle out of borrowed sand. And he was letting it collapse on everyone else. I thought about my humiliation at the family dinner, about being reduced to a joke, the family CFO who carried burdens while Zane shined. And then I thought about the call from the bank, the forgery, and the look of disbelief on my father's face when the truth came out. That was the moment I stopped thinking like the invisible daughter. I started thinking like an avenger. I spent the next week quietly collecting everything. I went to the bank, pretending to be the dutiful sister, and asked for copies of all related contracts. I found discrepancies everywhere, late fees stacking up, signatures that didn't match, hidden clauses Zane had brushed aside. I also checked the dealership records. It turned out Zane hadn't just exaggerated, he'd outright lied. He had underreported his income, overstated his assets, and convinced the manager to push it through by dangling my name and my father's reputation. Each discovery was like striking another match. My fury burned hotter, but so did my clarity. By the end of the week, I had a folder full of damning evidence, forged signatures, overdue notices, bank correspondence. Proof that Zane wasn't just reckless, he was fraudulent. And with it, I began to plan. It wasn't enough to confront him privately again. He'd wriggle out, make excuses, cry, or charm. No, this needed to happen where the weight of the truth couldn't be ignored, where his charm couldn't shield him. The perfect opportunity came sooner than I expected. My cousin Senna was engaged, and our family was invited to a grand engagement party. Everyone important would be there. Extended relatives, family, friends, neighbors. The same crowd that had laughed at me when Zane turned me into a punchline. That was the stage. I didn't tip my hand. At home, I acted quieter than usual, even obedient. My mother seemed relieved, mistaking my silence for acceptance. Zane strutted around like a peacock, posting Instagram reels of himself behind the wheel, captioned with things like #living_large and #dream_big. My father stayed cold with him, but not cold enough to cut him off completely. He still wanted to believe his son could be redeemed. Good. Let them believe. The more secure Zane felt, the harder the fall would hit. I even agreed when Zane smirked and said, "Maya, make sure you look nice at Sanaa's party. I'll pick you up in the car. We'll make an entrance." "Oh, don't worry, I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'll be ready." The night of the party, the hall glittered with lights, flowers, and the hum of conversation. Tables groaned under food, cousins laughed, and a live band played soft music. Zane pulled up to the entrance in the luxury car, honking twice so everyone would look. Heads turned. Cameras flashed. He stepped out in a tailored suit, slick with confidence, and offered me his arm like I was his accessory. I took it because sometimes you have to walk right into the fire to burn everything down. Inside, the compliments poured in. "Mashallah, what a car." "Zane, bye, you've made it big." "Handsome man, handsome wheels." He lapped it up, smiling, basking. My parents looked proud again, as though the forgery, the debt, the humiliation had evaporated into thin air. I stayed quiet, sipping water, waiting. It happened after dinner when the host invited people to share a few words for the happy couple. Several relatives gave short, sweet blessings. Then, to my surprise, the microphone was pushed toward my father. "Fareed, bye, say something," someone urged. He hesitated, then stood. He spoke about family, loyalty, and the importance of trust in marriage. His words carried weight. And as I listened, a realization struck me. Trust wasn't just what the bride and groom needed. It was what our family had lost, and it was time to expose why. As he stepped down, I moved before I could second-guess myself. I reached for the microphone. "May I say a few words too?" The crowd nodded, smiling. They expected a blessing, a quiet, dutiful Maya speech. But my voice was steady when I began. "I want to talk about trust," I said, scanning the room. "Because trust is the foundation of every relationship. Without it, families collapse." People nodded. Zane smiled faintly, thinking I was building up to praise him. "But what happens," I continued, my tone sharpening, "when trust is broken within a family? When lies and forgery are dressed up as ambition? When a car parked outside is not a symbol of success, but of debt, fraud, and humiliation?" The room went still. My mother's hand shot to her mouth. My father's face hardened. Zane froze. I pulled the folder from my bag and held it up. "This is the paperwork for the luxury car everyone's been admiring. Here are the forged signatures. Here are the missed payments. Here are the lies that put my parents' names in, their dignity, and the line. Gasps rippled through the hall. A few people leaned forward, whispering. Others exchanged shocked looks. This car, I said, my voice rising, was not bought with success. It was bought with deceit. My brother forged my father's name. He missed his very first payment. And while you all clapped for him, he let our mothers shoulder the legal burden. He turned our family into a joke. Zane leapt to his feet. Maya, enough. His voice cracked with desperation. You're exaggerating, am I? I snapped, thrusting the papers toward him. Read them. Show everyone. Tell them I'm lying. Go ahead. He stammered, reached out, then stopped. Because he knew. Everyone could see it in his face. Guilt, naked and undeniable. The hall buzzed with whispers. My aunt muttered, Ya Allah. Someone else said, so that's the truth. Another cousin shook her head in disgust. My father stood, his voice thundering. Zane, is this true? Zane tried to speak, but no words came. He looked cornered, a trapped animal. The silence was answer enough. My mother's tears spilled down her cheeks. My father's shoulders slumped, decades of pride crumbling in one night. And the guests. They were relentless. Questions flew. How much debt? What about the forgery? What will happen to the family name? Zane shrank under the weight of their stares. The same crowd that had laughed at me 2 weeks ago now laughed bitterly at him. The same people who had called him bold now called him reckless. The spotlight he loved so much had turned into a burning interrogation lamp. And I stood there steady, watching the scales tip. That night after the party, the storm followed us home. My father's fury was volcanic. You forged my name, he shouted, slamming the documents onto the table. Do you understand what that means? You could destroy everything I built. Zane tried to beg. I just wanted to prove myself. I wanted people to respect me. Respect. My father roared. Respect is earned by honesty, not by lies on 4 wheels. My mother sobbed, whispering prayers under her breath. I stood in the corner, silent now, the damage done. Zane finally turned to me, his voice breaking. Why did you do this, Maya? You humiliated me in front of everyone. I met his eyes. No, Zane, you humiliated yourself. I just held up the mirror. The next morning, my father made a decision. You will return the car, he told Zane flatly. We will cut our losses. We will pay what we must, but you will not drag us further into debt. Zane protested, begged, even tried to argue, but this time no one sided with him. Not my mother, not me. The dealership was contacted. The car was repossessed within a week. The same neighbors who had admired it now whispered about its disappearance. And with every whisper, Zane's pride withered. For the first time in years, he wasn't the golden boy. He was the cautionary tale, and me. For the first time, people looked at me differently. Not as the invisible one, not as the safety net, but as the one who had spoken the truth when it mattered. A week later, Zane came to me, eyes hollow. You've ruined me, he said bitterly. Everyone's laughing. No one respects me now. I looked at him calmly. Respect isn't built on cars or lies. It's built on character. If you want it back, earn it. He flinched, then walked away. And for the first time in my life, I didn't chase after him. I didn't fix it. I let him sit in the ruins he had created. Because justice wasn't about making him suffer. It was about finally balancing the scales. When you grow up being the fixer, you don't realize how much of yourself you've poured into everyone else's cracks until you finally stop. That's what those weeks after Zane's downfall felt like. The sudden, dizzying realization that my shoulders were no longer bent under the weight of everyone else's mess. For the first time, I wasn't running damage control. I wasn't smoothing things over. I wasn't the silent accountant of everyone else's sins. And the strangest part, the world didn't collapse when I stopped. Instead, it shifted. After the engagement party scandal and the repossession of the car, our house grew quiet and comfortably quiet. My mother stopped humming when she cooked. My father spent long hours in his office. Not because he had more work, but because disappointment had become too heavy to sit with at the dining table. And Zane, he shrank. His phone, once constantly buzzing with notifications, lay abandoned on the coffee table. Friends stopped calling. The cousins who used to hang around him avoided his eyes at gatherings. Even the neighbors who had once leaned over the wall to admire his shiny prize now whispered behind their doors when he walked by. The boy who had lived for applause now lived in echoes. I should have felt pity. Sometimes late at night, I did. But mostly I felt relief. Relief that I was no longer invisible. Relief that the truth was no longer just a knot in my throat. Relief that I had finally chosen myself over the endless cycle of enabling. One evening, about 2 weeks after the car was taken away, my father called us all into the living room. His voice was heavy, final. "This ends here," he said, looking directly at Zane. "No more loans. No more shortcuts. If you want to earn respect, you'll do it with honest work, not by forging my name or leaning on your sister." Zane didn't argue this time. His eyes were downcast, his shoulders slumped. The fight had gone out of him. My father turned to me. For the first time in years, he looked at me as though truly seeing me. "Maya," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I made you carry too much. I let you take responsibility because you were capable and because it was easier than facing the truth about my son. That was unfair to you." My throat tightened. For so long I had wanted acknowledgement, and here it was simple, overdue, but real. "Thank you, Abba," I said softly. "I just needed you to see it." My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. She didn't speak, but her tears said enough. For once, they weren't tears of denial. They were tears of recognition. As for Zane, the weeks that followed were brutal for him. He tried applying for jobs, but his reputation had already been stained. No one trusted him with responsibility. His charm, once enough to get him through doors, now fell flat in the face of what everyone knew, that behind the smile was a trail of lies. I caught him one afternoon staring at the empty driveway where the car had once gleamed like a crown. His eyes were hollow, his lips pressed tight. "Do you hate me?" he asked suddenly without looking at me. I thought carefully before answering. "No, I don't hate you. But I hate what you did. I hate how you used us. I hate how you made me small so you could feel big." He swallowed his Adam's apple, bobbing. "I just wanted to matter." "You already mattered," I said softly. "But you wanted to matter more than the rest of us. That's where you went wrong." He didn't reply. But for the first time, he didn't try to defend himself either. That silence was his first honest step. In the weeks that followed, I began to feel lighter, without the constant burden of fixing everything. I had space to think about myself, my own life, my own dreams. I signed up for a professional development course in forensic accounting, something I had always wanted to pursue but never had time for. I baked for pleasure, not as a stress relief valve, and even took small orders from friends who insisted my cardamom cake deserved to be sold. For the first time, I entertained the idea that my life didn't have to revolve around patching others. People in the family began to treat me differently too. Cousins who used to overlook me now came to me for advice. Aunts who once whispered, "Poor Maya," now praised my strength. The narrative had shifted. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore, was the one who stood up, who held the family accountable. One Sunday afternoon, my father called me into his office. He gestured for me to sit. On the desk was a new ledger, freshly bound. "This," he said, tapping it, "is the family account book. I want you to manage it officially. Not in the shadows, not quietly, but openly. Everyone will know you are the one who keeps us steady. You've earned that recognition." I hesitated, then smiled. "Thank you, Abba. But I'll only do it on one condition, that no one signs my name to anything ever again." He chuckled, a tired but genuine laugh. "That I can promise." Zane's path wasn't easy. He had to sell off what little he had left, cut back on luxuries, and start from the bottom. My father refused to bail him out again. My mother still cooked his favorite meals, but even she stopped making excuses for him. One evening, I overheard him on the phone applying for a basic sales job. His voice was low, stripped of bravado. It wasn't much, but it was honest. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something real. He caught me listening and gave me a small, sheepish smile. For the first time in years, it wasn't cocky. It was human. Looking back now, I realized that the humiliation at that dinner, the laughter, the jokes, the whispers, wasn't just a wound. It was the crack that let the truth pour out. It forced me to stop being the invisible fixer and start being the one who demanded accountability. Yes, Zane lost his car. Yes, my family's pride took a hit. But in the long run, we gained something more valuable: honesty. My father finally saw me. My mother finally stopped pretending. And my brother finally faced the consequences of his choices. And me, I finally stepped out of the shadows. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: silence may keep the peace, but it also keeps you small. Speaking the truth may cause chaos, but sometimes chaos is the only way to clear the rot. I used to think my role was to support, to smooth, to stay quiet. Now I know my role is to stand for Maven if it means standing alone. My brother got a luxury car and I got the bill. But when it was all said and done, he drove off poorer. And I walked away richer in dignity, in strength, and in finally being seen. Because sometimes justice isn't about revenge. It's about rewriting the story of who you are. And for me, that story no longer begins with invisible. It begins with enough dot, and that's how my brother lost his luxury car while I walked away richer in dignity and strength. Family can betray you, but justice always finds its way. If this story struck a chord with you, don't forget to hit the like button to support the channel. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my place? Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next story, because sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply the truth revealed.